well as on social inclusion. UNESCO has led the development of a framework for action for achieving this goal, and one of the recommendations is, and I quote, to develop policies and programs for the provision of quality distance learning in tertiary education with appropriate financing and use of technology, including the internet, massive open online courses, and other modalities that meet accepted quality standards to improve access, unquote. This means that there will be a greater emphasis than ever before on distance and technology-enabled learning as governments try and provide access to quality higher education for their citizens. India is a young country with a median age of 27 years. India is also a country with a huge population. How can we convert this into a demographic dividend? As we know, there is a high rate of unemployment, especially among the youth. 10% of our young people are unemployed. The gross enrollment ratio for tertiary education among the 18 to 23-year-olds is only about 20%, well below the average of 40 to 50% in the developed world. What will be the role of open universities in increasing access to quality higher education? How can young people be skilled for employment and entrepreneurship through open and distance learning? Our Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has called for skills to be developed at speed and at scale. There are several examples of best practice at the YCMOU, the KK Handiki State Open University, to name just two. Orissa Open University has a special clause in its act to promote skills development. How can we share our resources and expertise to harness the potential of ODL to skill the nation? The second major development has been in the area of technology. When I first joined IGNOU, VCRs, audio and video cassettes were considered an innovation. Today, everything is digital, and our smartphones are more powerful than the computers of those days. Over the past 5 years, we have seen the phenomenal growth of massive open online courses, or MOOCs, which is nothing but a form of distance and online learning. In 2015, more people signed up for MOOCs than in the previous 3 years combined. So MOOCs are here to stay. The MOOC has one distinction. It is the only scalable educational technology that was developed by and for educators. Nearly all other educational technologies, such as radio and TV, were adaptations of technology developments from other sectors. But can we reach the unreached using MOOC platforms? While there are 80 internet users per 100 in the developed world, the figure in India drops to 18%. The real growth has taken place in mobile devices, and there are 75 mobile phone users for every 100 persons in our country. This calls for innovations in the use of MOOCs. Just to give you one example, calls MOOC for Malis or gardeners was offered jointly with the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, and participants learned through basic mobile phones, call centers, and peer-to-peer interactions. MOOCs, as we know, are a form of distance learning, and the open universities in India can take a leadership role in harnessing their potential. What are the implications of MOOCs for open universities? Open universities have so far largely operated within national or regional jurisdictions. With the MOOC platform, the world has become a connected classroom. Students had limited interactions with their tutors in study centers. There is now a greater emphasis on peer-to-peer interactions and use of social media. MOOCs promote greater learner autonomy and more structured course content. As ODL practitioners, we have always catered to the autonomous learner and provided well-designed content. But MOOCs, through the use of new technologies, have taken this to the next level. The modules have become smaller and more granular. There is a greater emphasis on short videos and more dialogue and interaction, mostly among peers. We can learn from the MOOC experience to strengthen learner support, which has been a little bit of our weak area. Research shows that the more engaged the learner, the greater the likelihood of their success and fewer chances of dropping out. Regular feedback is another important feature of ensuring the success of our learners. MOOC platforms can be a valuable channel for us to enhance learning outcomes. But to implement innovations, we need the staff to take ownership. This would require a greater focus on staff development. I remember when I joined IGNO, I underwent an induction program with other new recruits for a full 3 weeks. And then there was continuous capacity building in various aspects of ODL. The IGNO leadership ensured that we were not only up to date in recent developments, but were also excited about our work and the opportunity we had to make a difference to the lives of thousands of learners. The VCs led large delegations to international conferences to build the IGNO brand, forge networks, and provide exposure to the staff. Have we lost our way over the years? As VCs, you can not only motivate your staff to give their best, but also ensure that constant training and retraining becomes an integral part of your institution. Today we live in an age of endless possibilities. All nations are considering how to achieve quality education and lifelong learning for all by 2030. Open universities must seize this opportunity and align themselves to this agenda and be active contributors to national development. Open universities have the expertise and experience in technology, pedagogy, and social inclusion. Campus institutions have much to learn from us. The time has come to go beyond seeking parity of esteem and to create new models to skill our nation with speed and at scale. With that, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Now the session is open for discussion. I request Chairperson to initiate the discussion.
Okay. Yeah. So we had two important topics. We had the quality assurance perspective, inculcating a new skill education through ODL process. The first one was from our none other than Dr. Thakaveli Shop, and he has brought a new dimensional approach on the knowledge sharing process through brain-based learning. He has elaborated in a different ways, so I no need to explain all these things because he has made us to understand in a different format, followed by a video screening through a quality assurance and leadership received from Asha Kanwar from Canada, CEO Canada. So now I request the delegates to give your opinion and propose some discussion on these presentations. Thank you.
Sir, as far as the right brain is concerned, in one of the theories, they say that it is the half of the brain, the right and the left. Left, it talks about the rational, and right, it talks about the imagination. And if you add the both, then that will be called as holistic approach. But what we have seen over here is that if we strengthen the right, it is the holistic approach. Here it is being emphasized like that. That is one way which I have looked into. Secondly, so Japan has used the right hand side of the brain and has got tremendous results in terms of innovations and the creativity. But there also I think there is no model for education. So can we think in terms of any specific model? Because right now, even when we are talking about the digital learning, it is also based on the left hand side of the brain. Using right for innovations, and then when it comes to implementation, then we have to use the left. So again, the confusion is there. Holistic brain, where it stands, and how this brain can be used for the learning process. Can you elaborate further to enlighten all of us?
I think there must be some other people to comment on this point. But my point is, when we think of a brain-based working and learning, we think both the aspects, rational aspect as well as imaginative aspect. When the right brain is working, doesn't mean that left brain stops working. It is also working in its own way. Possibly they work in unison and they combine what is called knowledge with specific logic, and also knowledge with holistic nature, and its experience and imagination. But its other experiences and imagination is more subjective, and that's why subjectivity of an individual dominates here, and how to make it objective is always a task, and therefore we do it differently. So that is one point that I will like to say. So it is not concentrating on one and leaving other. That's what I will say. It's a balanced development. It has to be. Second point is where we concentrate. So far we neglected right brain and we concentrated on left brain. Now we concentrate on both the brain, and particularly innovation, because we have to understand how the robots are working and possibly train robots also in different ways. So the logical thinking has to be a part of our life. But simultaneously imagination, which robots will not be able to do, which Wexown calls it non-machine intelligence. So that intelligence comes into the play, and that aspect has to be developed appropriately. And as you said that, well, many countries which are developing that way have shown wonderful results. You gave an example of Japan. There is an example of Finland. They are concentrating on everybody's different nature and educating them right from their school level, and they are having wonderful results. In fact, they never ask their children to compete with anybody. No, you compete with yourself. Don't compete with others. And the performance was, these are the children at the 10th standard and 12th standard went into the international Olympiads and got all the top positions. America started wondering why a country like Finland gets all the top positions and not our persons. So they studied that, and they realized that it is not the competitive spirit, but the individual development and the direction of development or the control of development in the hands of a person, that matters more. I think that is the whole approach. But I would say that this is evolving. So you can think in a different way and create models. Actually creating different models and different paradigms is a great task of a creativity, and that creativity can fit into the situations, local as well as global, in a different way with you. But you, something else is different. So, not to copy the same thing everywhere, one fit for all, no. One pattern for all, one dress for all. That is the regimental approach already that was practiced. But now it is a different approach. Possibly educationists can comment better on this. Please.
One small, this may personal a query. Like when we are using so much of machines and digital words and all that, then our imagination is a little bit suppressed. This is what I feel. Because when I read some novel and all that, so I imagine the character myself, that how that character would look like. But when we see the pictures, everything is on us. So that part which is active at that time when we are reading is active. But when we see the visuals and when we work on the machine, then that particular part of our brain is not working. Then how we have to maintain the balance between the two?
I think this is the main task. This is the main task of education. But I believe that Mahatma Gandhi was always opposed to industrial methods of mass production. And his objection was from two holds. One thing, it takes away jobs from many. That was one point. Second point was the factory model or industry model makes human being a part of machine, cog in the machine. So that is the second point. And all his creativity, humanness is killed. That's why he was vehemently opposed to machine. But any machine which everybody can use, he was in favor of it. And therefore the point is, if this mass use of machines or massification of machines, it's all right, it is empowering you. So the empowerment process of mass machines. Second point is, are we going to be a slave to the machine or distinctively different human being than machine? This is the problem we have to pose. And this problem has to be solved by education alone. That's why the Gandhiji's education was for new education, innovative. New doesn't mean new against old. It's innovative education. Every day I should be innovative. That's what he was saying. And secondly, it is a creative education. Creativity is the quality of human being, not of the machines. And that quality has to be trained and perpetuated to the largest extent. And that's why we come here to education in which innovation, creativity, imagination, perception of models or recognition of models, I mean all this becomes a part of your curriculum. How you are going to make it is a different matter. That is the challenge.
I'd like to add
Please.
one aspect of it. When you say you are reading and as opposed to what you're watching digital, we always in education we say there is a transfer of skill. When you're reading, you have only that what you judge your own character and you're within that kind of framework. But while you are watching something, your creativity, because always we say pictorial representation, we are talking about the other kids who are not at the high level or academic. I mean, I would not like to use the term academic actually. Those kids to create interest, it's a pictorial. So they love to immediately transfer that skill, what they have seen, into something else. That becomes a creativity and then they go further. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. It's quite consistent.
Thank you.
Sir, I read that our brain development is completed up to age of 6. So if it is so, then what happens to later on then?
I think I think this theory is not right. But the point is, there is one point. We have sentiments. I think 6 sentiments are there which are fundamental. And those 6 sentiments, anger, love, hate. So these 6 are there. And those 6 are instincts or the sentiments which has come to you as an animal. So they are animal instincts. Because human being, after all, is an animal. 98%, I think, so that major part of our genes and the experiences is more like a reflection, like an animal. Some part of it is we have created through few thousands or 10,000 years of civilization, not more than lakh of years of civilized working. And there is something which is another creative part in it. So these 3 components, dominating part is an animal part. So that's why sometimes we behave like an animal. I mean, that is and how to make person control all those animal instincts and behave more like a human being is the education that has to be given in the childhood. I mean, that is the important point of it. And that's why the 3 years, up to 3 years or up to 6 years are very important. But here at the theory, at least the neuroscience tells you that this development is throughout the life. Might be earlier development is clean, on clean slate, and therefore is faster. Later on, somehow the brain starts getting saturated, and therefore things become complex. What is to be left and what is to be kept, become some sort of different issues. And what is important, what is unimportant, value system, so many things come in. But that is a brain-based learning. And this is of recent origin. Let me tell you, few years have passed.
Sir, you are talking about transition, particularly from the industrial phase or process of learning to the digital process of learning. Now, what I could see around us when I see the functioning of open universities in India and in the global arena, I find that some of the universities which are still sticking to the industrial process of learning are being called outdated and they are being sidelined. And similarly, some of the universities which have completely become digital are also being considered as outdated, and they are also facing problems. So how to strike a balance in this present context? How to strike a balance between this industrial phase and the digital phase, and how to cross this transitional process?
Yesterday I was discussing one point, and clash of cultures. And when there is a change of age, cultures are age dependent, because there is some sort of universal part of it which remains in civilization. But the age dependent part is more linked with the activities and the development aspect of the society. So we have definitely cultivated certain culture of industrial age, which was different than the feudal age of the medieval type. That feudal type of organization arrangement doesn't mean that for all the feudalism we have lost. Just now also you'll find that in a number of families, the feudal attitude is there, impression is there, approaches are there, practices are there. But then this is always rather that conflicts with the industrial culture, work culture, machine-based culture. And now the digital culture is coming, which is not competitive, which is non-linear, which is creative. And this culture will need a stage of plenty. Machines and other things and factories run by robots and the society possibly will create plenty, and your basic needs everywhere could be fulfilled. If that is the scenario created, then what is the function of a man? What is its livelihood? What is the nature of work? Where he is likely to grow? What is the challenge for such a man to grow? I think these are the problems which are coming up. And this conflict of ages cannot subside quickly. It will take many, many years of conflicting situations. Even consider the medieval feudal arrangement to the industrial arrangement and what sort of conflicts we are facing. I think if you can start analyzing, looking at everywhere, you will find that presence of both, just now also. So from the industrial to the digital, we will be facing similar conflicts. But this time, the process of change is very fast. So fast that within 10 years, you will find that so many things. And young generation picks up the new things. Old generations try to keep that position and power and influence intact. This is the conflict of generations. And there is no easy solution for it. There is no solution, in fact. Slowly, we rather create new situations in such a way that people feel that this is not necessary now, age has changed. I gave you an example. I had a number of books, but now that I prefer to go on Google, find out my latest references and possibly latest changes. That gives me better knowledge. So if this is available for everybody, now it is not my books and my personal library, but rather everybody's access. So immediately I come down to the acceptance of a new value system. It is a shareable. Let us share it. So this is a change. It will take place because cultural change takes longest time. I mean that we should remember.
Sir, please.
Sir, we have been talking since yesterday. The theme is basically this ODL education and then integration of all other aspects into this. Somewhere now just we find that bringing more easiness into the system, somewhere we are got stuck to more complexities insofar just with making this educational system in terms of its equity, in terms of its accessibility and so many things. I exactly don't remember, there is a saying that innovation is a culture. Some scientist or some philosopher has said. But ultimately that culture was when spoken, that culture is pertaining to the human beings. There is no culture of robots or there is no culture of just with machines. So somewhere we are just with finding that we are changing and bringing so many things into our system. As you said that we have to cope up with that quickly. But some of the just with educationists, top educationists like you and others, when we hear from them, they are really just with at pains when they think that what education apart, what would happen to the humanism as a human being, where we are taking up this whole just what planet in the name of this quick changes. There will be a fight that, as you said, that enough is enough. Now let us seclude this human being from all those clutches and let the next generation will be only learning how to remain as a human being. The next thing, forget about your Mars and forget about your 20 rockets in a day. The rockets are, 20 rockets are going in a day just with, to far just with of distances. But at the same time, on this planet, for which all these things are going to be done in a fantastic and just with a big way, as you said that cultural things are mixed in such a just with vague way. At one point of just with in one of the district of this Maharashtra, this waters management and this all these processes, that's fine. That we are talking about the Google and we are talking about all those things. But what I mean to say that when we are furthering our just with this system, the researches, whatever just with this through the ODL way or the formal education system, we have not to just with forget that ultimately, if this is not equitable even in one district, we have to be through all these just what information has to be used for the transformation purposes. If whatever the things we are doing, it is not bringing some transformational changes,